Hi, you're listening to She Shield, your one-stop pod for all topics personal safety. I'm your host, Sofia, and my goal is to help educate women and men on concealed carry, martial arts, and all topics self-defense. Guys, we just hit 30,000 downloads. Thank you so much for those of you listening who helped contribute to that. That is a huge deal and milestone for a podcast that hasn't really been shouted out on any big channels. It's just been kind of organically grown over time. I'm so thankful for our sponsors. And speaking of, this episode is sponsored by Big Tex Ordnance, your soon-to-be favorite retailer for all of your firearms needs. BTO believes in only selling high-quality gear for responsibly armed citizens, as well as providing pre- and post-sale support. BTO values firearms training and supports firearms instructors nationwide. They even pay for their own staff to train with high-level instructors to ensure that when you as the consumer reach out, you are taken care of. Today, we have Cliff Byerly, the owner of Hill Country Combatives, on the podcast. I had the honor of training with Cliff at the 2024 Annual Combatives Association Summit and got to do some incredible work. I am very new to catch wrestling, but absolutely appreciated the way you instructed to everyone from the beginner to the seasoned police officer, military personnel. So, Cliff, thank you for coming on today. I would love for you to introduce yourself to the listeners.
Honored, humbled as always. But yeah, Cliff Byerly, retired LAPD, also did 23 years in the Marine Corps, 12 active, 11 reserves. Now I own Hill Country Combatives, which is kind of an all-encompassing training facility out here. We do grappling, striking, shooting, pretty much anything that's requested. That doesn't involve the ATF, we can do out here. Jiu-jitsu black belt under Rodrigo Pinheiro up in San Antonio. Got my black belt in 2019. Took me about 20 years because of military deployments and stuff like that. Very active in Muay Thai as well. A lot of shooting courses as a student. Especially this month, I've been at one like every week, which was kind of crazy. So shoot a lot, do combatives a lot. But yeah, it's like I train Muay Thai under Pete Spratt. Like I said, Rodrigo Pinheiro is my main jiu-jitsu coach. Catch wrestling, I started probably about 20 years ago as well under the legendary Billy Robinson and Eric Paulson, those guys, when they were out in California. And I train way more than I teach, but my reasoning for learning from as many people as possible is because my students and the people that give me their time don't have the opportunity just to go take a class. So I want my students to get the latest and greatest information possible. So that's why I keep training as long as my body holds up. So that's pretty much me in a nutshell.
Absolutely. Well, since we're on that topic, I didn't have this queued up or anything, but I am curious, how do you go about finding that balance and striking that balance? You said you train more than you instruct. So what made you want to do that besides being able to be a resource through other instructors? Is that how it always was for you?
It's the way it was because, I started wrestling when I was 6 years old. And for me, being a wrestler was a year-round activity. So in the summertime, it was probably, looking back, it was probably a way for my parents to get me out of the house. But they would ship me off to wrestling camps around the country. So I was pretty much gone from them all summer. So that kind of got me, I really believe that kind of got me in the mindset of looking for outside training instead of looking for training within the club, looking for like, hey, this guy says it a different way, so I'm going to go see why, So I'm always looking for where stuff fails, basically. And I don't know, I'm kind of the odd one because, like, if I hear an instructor teach something or say something that is different than what I've learned, I want to go see why. I've never been one of the guys like, oh, that sounds stupid. That guy, I don't write people off. I want to go see like, well, I'm always thinking like, well, maybe I'm wrong. Right. And I've had my mind changed on quite a few things over the years. But then, it's like, then I joined when I went in the Marine Corps and I went to NDOC and I got selected for the reconnaissance, battalion out of Camp Pendleton. I mean, we got sent to all kinds of shooting schools and stuff. So I don't know. It was just always like from that process, it was just kind of like a life thing. It's like, I don't know anything different. But for me, it's like I tell people, like, it has to be a lifestyle. If it's just a hobby, eventually you'll find a new hobby. Right? Because
Yes.
like what I do and what you're into now, it's, I don't, at my age at 57, I don't even call them injuries. It's just another little disability because I'm not going to heal like I used to. So you just learn to work around stuff. But, I've had so many surgeries and injuries and stuff. Like you just learn to work around it. But that's because it's a lifestyle. If it was a hobby, it's like, yeah, I'm not going to do that again. Last time it hurt this or that. So you really just got to make it part of your life and, just do it.
Absolutely. Do you do anything to maintain your mobility? Like, do you have a routine that you practice to stay healthy?
Oh yeah. It's like for now, it's like I do, but I don't. I don't do a lot of the ego lifts. And ego lifts, I
Mm,
mean like heavy back squats, bench press, deadlifts.
okay.
Uh, I do a lot more kettlebell stuff now.
Okay.
And to me, like, if you could only own one fitness instrument, I think the kettlebell is it because especially for like grappling and combatives art, the kettlebell is such an overall strength and conditioning tool. Right. But I start off my day with like 20 to 30 minutes of stretching. I have a app for that, because I'm not that smart. So every day is Monday is like full body recovery stretch. Today was lower body. I don't know what tomorrow is, but it's like, so like I start like before people get here to work out, like I do all my mobility stuff. So when I'm showing them and demoing them, like the lifts or whatever we're doing, like I'm already kind of did my mobility stuff. So that really reduces, well, it puts the risk of injury lower. There's no guarantee, but like I tell people, like mobility is so important. Like everybody wants to have like pretty show muscles and stuff, but I wish I knew about yoga, Pilates, like in my 20s instead of just, oh, let's see how much I can bench press. Because in 2008, August 3rd, I'll never forget, it was my mom's birthday. And I was teaching CrossFit in the morning, and we did the workout Diane, which is high rep deadlifts and handstand push-ups. Well, I finished the CrossFit coaching thing. I go up to work. So driving around in my undercover car for about 2 hours. Boom, I'm in a foot pursuit with a guy with a gun and a bunch of PCP. And I tore my hamstring, but his lookout started laughing. So I'm like, oh, heck no. So I literally chased this guy for like 3 more blocks. I ended up catching him. But my partner took me to the hospital and he was like, if you would have went 5 more feet, we would be reattaching your hamstring to the
Oh my
bone. You almost ran
goodness.
it off the bone. They
Oh
put
my
in drain
gosh.
tubes, not to get too graphic, but I had literally blood
Fine.
from my belt to my heel from that major tear. But the positive note was my physical therapy was going to Pilates for like 6 months.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah. And that was the most mobile and like flexible I ever had. But of course, me being 30 something or whatever it was, like, oh, I don't need that. I just went back to doing, 300-pound back squats. Like,
Mm.
it didn't dawn on me until like I got injured pretty bad again at like 50, and my recovery wasn't there because I didn't have the mobility. So I tell like, people, is like, especially law enforcement and people in the combative sports, like, yeah, you got to have strength, but mobility is such a longevity thing, especially for guys. I mean, it's like you find a way to work on your mobility. I mean, that will extend, this lifestyle that we do way farther than, trying to back squat 600 pounds or whatever, but nobody told me that back then. Like in the 70s, playing football and stuff for school, 80s, it's like you walk from the locker room to the football field. That was your warm up. Now let's start hitting each other.
Yeah,
It's like we didn't
absolutely.
have the knowledge, everything evolves drastically, but, back then, like, it's just the way it was.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. I Part of the goal of this podcast is to bring those things up that don't get enough attention, have a platform to have these discussions on. And just because you mentioned high school, I thought I would mention I almost joined the wrestling team in high school, and I don't have many regrets in life. Um, but not joining the wrestling team is one of them. And it was because an ex was on the team. And I was like,
Yeah.
I can't join that. That's like
Yeah.
asking for drama. So I didn't
Yeah.
join, and I just regret it. I wish I would have gone for it, but who knows? Maybe it was protecting me from some injury as a result of their lack of warm up. Who knows? I'll just tell myself that.
Yeah. Like, I think it's Pennsylvania, and there's like a couple other states. Female wrestling is the fastest growing sport in the state.
Oh, I love to hear that.
Yep. It's
Such good
amazing.
news.
Yeah, it's super cool. I mean, you didn't see that when I was a kid. There was no girl wrestlers.
Right.
So
Absolutely.
I think it's super cool.
Agreed. Agreed. Absolutely. And since we're on that topic, I'm super curious to know. Something I love about having this podcast is that I get to be selfish and ask the questions that I am like mostly interested in knowing. But since you've trained various martial arts like BJJ, Krav Maga, Tang Soo Do, how does catch wrestling compare in terms of control tactics for real world scenarios? Sorry, I have a hard time saying real world.
Well, yeah,
Say it
so
five
like,
times fast.
well, they talk about jiu-jitsu is like the gentle art of grappling. Catch wrestling is considered the violent art of grappling, but it also focuses on pins over submissions. So, like in jiu-jitsu, the hierarchy of positions is based on points. Like, you get mount is 4 points, back control is 4 points, whatever. In wrestling, like, you get ride time and stuff like that. So like in the practical world, what you see a lot, like if you think about regular jiu-jitsu, a lot of people will pass up submission opportunities for a positional opportunity, right? So like if you hit, say, like what's in wrestling is called a valley drop. You hit a valley drop, guy lands on his left side, say, there is a Kimura or double wrist lock, whatever sport you're training there, but a lot of people hit that takedown and they'll transition right to mount because that's the points. In catch wrestling, they don't really care about submissions, positions. Like if there's a submission there, like Billy Robson used to say, just rip it off. Like he didn't care about positions, right? I mean, so that's the big thing in like wrestling and catch wrestling. They use a lot of rides to exhaust their opponent, and because when somebody's exhausted, they make mistakes. So, and that's kind of like what we worked on at the Combative Summit was those rides. Because if you transition, like if you're mounted and they get on a hip, you switch to S mount. That's jiu-jitsu. In catch wrestling, they'll slide down and ride the hips Because now, like when you're riding the hips, it opens up your peripheral vision because you have more space between you and your opponent, so you can see what their hands are doing if it's a potential weapons-based environment. Plus, a lot of the like Khabib or Kahib, whatever his name is, a lot of the Turkestan UFC guys, they're all about riding the legs and just punching the heck out of people. Because it exhausts people and it sets up a lot of stuff. But it's like I tell people, I worked my whole cop career. I worked the most violent area in South LA, arguably, and I never used jiu-jitsu once, but I grappled pretty much every day. It was understanding how to close the distance, hitting arm drags to usually like a valley drop, and then rides and, getting them in handcuffs. But I can't think of a single jiu-jitsu move that I've ever used in the street. Everything was wrestling, every single thing. Yeah.
As far as other elements of jiu-jitsu, when it comes to getting uncomfortable with, or getting comfortable with discomfort and maybe knowing how to use weight distribution, would you say any of that applied in its own way?
Oh yeah, I think jiu-jitsu is awesome for that. But I tell people, especially if you're in the first responder, medical, anywhere where you have to deal with like basically mental trauma, right? I think jiu-jitsu is your best drug for that, because it's like an hour and a half out of your day where you can't think about what happened on your last shift. It's just, you're just there trying to not get strangled or a limb ripped off, right? It's like you're not thinking about the bad that you saw your last shift. You know what I mean? I think that's the most amazing thing about jiu-jitsu. And yes, you do get comfortable being uncomfortable and all of that. But once again, from a longevity standpoint, the mental stuff that you take from it is, to me, that's your most important. Yeah, it's important getting comfortable, being uncomfortable and all that stuff. But, it's like, to me, it's the mental break you get 1 hour out of your day. To me, that's the biggest thing. Because so many people, it's like so many people, they've suffered some kind of mental trauma, in their life, and, they resort to something that just creates more unhealthy habits, right? It's like, instead of just, hey, I'm just going to go put on some pajamas and choke people for an hour. And it's just like, to me, that's your most important thing about jiu-jitsu.
I have never heard this perspective before. The difference between, because I've heard, jiu-jitsu only applies so far, but the mental perspective is not one that has been brought up. And I've had a lot of jiu-jitsu people on this podcast, not to say they haven't gone into the benefits, and the camaraderie of your jiu-jitsu family and whatnot, but I really appreciate this perspective. And since we're on the topic of pajamas, as far as gi versus no gi, is there any real difference there when it applies to submitting someone with a weapon, in your experience?
To me, I tell people, do what you enjoy, right? Because if you don't enjoy it, it's not going to become a lifestyle and you'll do something else. I love both, honestly. Being a wrestler, growing up as a wrestler, I love no gi. But my gi game, I don't really rely on like the gi top or stuff for grips. Like my game, cause I'm old and I've been hitting the head a lot. Like I can't remember a bunch of different stuff. So like, I said at this, the summit, my standing game is very much what I do on the ground. So it's like, my game is my game. So it's like, even in the gi, I'm still doing like single collar ties instead of grabbing the actual gi jacket. It's like my grips go from gi to no gi. I don't really have but I think you should do both. Uh, but I will say, if you're dealing with injuries, like if you're an older grappler like I am, the gi slows the game down a lot. So the potential of injury to me is less in the gi. Um, but I think you need to do both, because like even with the t-shirt on, you got loop chokes, you got a lot of stuff you can do with the t-shirt if you know how to grip it correctly. But being a dope cop in South LA, where PCP was very prevalent, I had to fight a lot of naked dudes. So like no gi plays in as well. I mean, it's like, it's just the way it is. You'd have some, naked guy walking down the street punching out car windows, you know? So
Classic.
somebody had to go put hands on him. You know what I mean? It's like, but yeah, I really think just find your passion. I don't really have an argument in that. You know what I mean? It's like, do what fits your lifestyle, and you'll continue to do it. But I think they're both awesome. But you just have to find which one you're passionate about, so you keep doing it. So
Absolutely. Ooh, I love that so much. I love when people say that. I have my master's in exercise science, and I was a personal trainer for a bit, and I've trained my whole life in various disciplines, and that's the common theme of everything with the clients I've worked with myself. Like, we ultimately end up doing what we enjoy. So
yep.
finding that and investing in it is so important. I just love that you mentioned that. So thank you for sharing that.
Oh, yeah.
So wonderful. Yes. Okay. I have a kind of a general question for you. It might sound kind of silly, but this is something I want to ask for the people that I talk to when I'm like, yeah, I was just down in D'Iberville, Mississippi. And they're like, what for? And I'm like, cool. The Combative Summit. And they're like, what's that for? And I'm like, oh, weapons-based entanglement. And then they just
Yeah.
are blank staring at me. And so how would you explain the discipline of weapons-based entanglement, and what changes when a weapon is introduced to a defensive situation?
Well, here's the thing. I use the term weapons-based entanglement too, but it's like I tell people, because they ask that, right? It's like, oh, what is that? It's like everything starts off as a fight. You don't know there's a weapon involved. Like, you only know there's a weapon involved when we're training together, right? Because it's my turn to go, it's your turn to have the weapon, right? But in a real fight, you don't know there's a weapon involved, right? And usually, like, working plainclothes narcotics, like I've witnessed, God, at least two murders that I can think of. And one was a sidewalk dice game in one of the projects. A fight started over a couple dollars. One kid that was losing the fight drastically, as soon as the other gangsters broke up the fight, he pulls out a gun and shoots and kills the guy. So that's, it's like, so usually it's a fight and then a weapon gets introduced, or the attempt to introduce a weapon into the fight is when that happens. And so that's kind of like how I explain how weapons-based entanglement starts. Because if you're in a fight with somebody and they attempt to introduce a weapon, or if they're successful, I don't want to create space like they teach in law enforcement, right? That's still being taught in law enforcement. Because potentially, if they're successful at introducing a gun, right, or I see the attempt to introduce a gun, and I create that space, now I'm actually creating a tie in a potential gunfight. So I want to maintain that connection. Either don't allow the weapon to be introduced, or control it, or the muzzle isn't on me, so I can introduce my own tool, right? So that's kind of how I explain the whole weapons-based entanglement. Generally, it's just a fight that you couldn't avoid, couldn't walk away from, and then you're dominating the person through your training and experience, and then they try to either introduce a weapon or they're successful with it. And you have to know you have to know how to control both realms and, potentially get to your own weapon to end the situation.
I love that. I'm going to use that, or I'm just going to direct them to this episode. So, yeah, if you're listening and I sent you here, welcome. I'm so glad that Cliff could be the one to explain it. Wonderful. And how does training with a weapon involved change from a blade to a pistol? Or is there really any difference?
To me, it's like, well, here's the thing. The gun, you have to actually control the gun, right? Because if you this control is like, say you get like you do like a handcuff position or a 2-on-1 with a gun, I still have wrist dexterity to potentially put the muzzle on a body part, right? With a blade, you just have to control the weapon-bearing limb. So to me, that's the big difference. The gun, you actually have to control the gun. A blade, you have to control the weapon-bearing limb. So that's the big difference that I focus on. But how I train it with people is we do skills in isolation, right? No weapon, gun or nothing. So we do skills in isolation. And then at the end of the day, we add in either UTM guns or blue guns, whatever. And then we do the skills and application. All right. So that's kind of how I break it down. I give them the skills. Hey, this is how you control your opponent. If it's just a fight, great, but you still have control of them. And then we add in the weapons to show them like, you don't need separate skills, right? So, and that's the skills and application part. It's controlling 2 of their limbs with 1 of yours. So you have one free to access a tool. Kind of it's pretty much what everybody worked on at the summit, which was really cool.
Absolutely. Yes. And on that topic, Lisa and I did a full deep dive into our review of the summit. I really appreciated how a lot of the concepts throughout many of the instructors connected. It didn't feel like a disconnected curriculum. So yes, I agree. I loved that. And I think it really started kind of coming together in your class. There were a few moves that I think it was called the crab ride. Crab ride. That was totally new to me. And I was like, what is this? But I'm so thankful for the experience.
It's such a good control thing because if you put a knee on somebody's back, they're going to get up, right? You can't make people like 50% of your balance and posture. And that's where the crab ride comes in. Because now they're carrying your weight.
Ooh,
So.
I'm using that on my sisters at Christmas to tickle them. That's happening. That's like the first thing that came to mind. Anyway, but yes, I agree. Hopefully we have some footage we can throw in of the crab ride, some B-roll here for the episode highlights, which I like to throw it in as much as possible. Lisa Hamilton makes those. You met Lisa. She was at the Combatives Summit.
She's awesome.
She's awesome. She killed it. That was her first grappling experience ever. And so she's been making highlights, trying to bring awareness to the summit and to individuals like you. I mean, that was the whole premise of She Shield. I felt like there's so many incredible instructors that I just hadn't heard of. And it's like, you really only hear about them through word of mouth and a few connection points. So, but yeah, kind of pivoting back at Krav Maga. I'd really like to talk to you about Krav Maga. I get this question from, I know, it's so typical. I get this question all the time from women, especially, and this came up the other day. I was in medical school for a little bit. One of my med student friends, I'm still friends with my study group. She was like, Sofia, I'm safe now. I took a Krav class and I was like, oh, yay. I'm over here like, shit. Don't be negative. Like, one Krav class is not, everything, but this is her momentum. Like, let's fuel this fire. I did Krav back in the day. And I've always had conflicting views because not every instructor was great. Are you ready to step up your shooting game? Introducing Walkers Inc., the pioneers in ear protection for shooting, hunting, and commercial applications. For over 25 years, they've been revolutionizing the industry, ensuring your hearing safety and enhancing your shooting experience. Anytime I'm on the range, indoor or outdoor, I use Walkers ear protection to have crystal clear communication with my fellow shooters. I personally use the disruptors for outdoor shooting and the recons for my indoor shooting adventures. Not only does it protect your hearing, but it also protects you. Being able to communicate with others on the range is vital to personal safety. You shouldn't have to sacrifice your safety when the ultimate goal is better self-protection. With walkers, you'll experience unparalleled comfort, unmatched innovation, and the industry standard in shooting ear protection. Don't settle for anything less when it comes to your safety and enjoyment on the range. You can save on Walker's ear protection and support the podcast by using code SHESHIELD20, that's SHESHIELD 20 at checkout. Again, that's SHESHIELD20 at checkout. So yes, I guess my official question is, how effective do you think Krav Maga is for everything from civilian self-defense to people working in law enforcement, military, if you don't mind?
Let's see, this is going to hurt a lot of feelings, I'm sure.
I'm ready.
But the thing with Krav, I think the Krav, they push a good mindset about fighting back, right? But I think a lot of their marketing, especially, and I can only speak from like where I came from and what I've seen, my experience with it. I think Krav spends a huge marketing budget on false fear and paranoia, especially to women. But a lot of their training, it's like, honestly, like I look at their training from a coach's standpoint, and it's like when I teach like classes, my evolution is like, I tell people, like at my classes, think of it as a laboratory, not a coliseum, right? Do what you learn, not what I teach, right? Because everybody's different shapes, sizes, injuries, all that stuff. But like what you see, like with Krav, to me is a definition of insanity, right? They're doing the same hammer fists like 50,000 times on a tombstone pad, whatever they call it, right? So if I hit you with my best hammer fist and I don't get the result I was expecting, 50 more to the same target isn't going to do any difference, right? So change the tool, change the target. But also, like you'll see, like I was just watching some, my buddy sent me some scenarios from, I don't know what Krav school, but it was like you basically had new students. Like, so if you take like the vehicle class I did a couple weeks ago, right? It's like everything was at a pace where they could see the opportunities and learn from them, right? And I tell people, like, even when I teach a competition grappling class, like your pace shouldn't be really any harder than 70%. 70% is a very solid competitive pace, but it also allows you to see opportunities at that pace. So being able to see opportunities, especially when you're learning a new skill, is huge. So if you take that vehicle class, yeah, I could have put them in the car, the ladies in the car, and then jumped in and just smashed them in the car. And, you know, they would have been doing all kinds of crazy stuff, but it really, in the long run, it would have been a mental failure to them, right? They'd be like, oh my God, like, you know, but that's how they sell more classes, right? They're like, oh my God, I'm so vulnerable and all this stuff. You know, but it's like, what are they learning? Like I've had a lot of Krav students over the years come out. Like we just did one back in the summer, actually, for a group of Krav students. And it was funny because this one guy, he had the big Krav logo and stuff. But twice during my entangled gunfighting class, he was like, I've been doing Krav for, I don't know, it was over a decade. I don't remember the time. But he was like, and everything we've trained in Krav has been an epic failure today. So I'm like, you know what I mean? So it's like, and it's not all bad, but if you look at, to me, like the best Krav schools that I've seen, they're just an MMA school. They're teaching Muay Thai and Jiu-Jitsu, and they do some weapons-based stuff. You know, and because it's funny because like when I first got sent to the Krav level, there's 5 different levels of law enforcement trainer stuff, or at least it used to be. it's like, that's when I was doing like MMA stuff. And you were like, oh, do this. And I'm just like, I was just like training for King of the Cage and all that stuff. And I'm just like, uh, I would just do that because that would be an epic fail. You know what I mean? But it was just like, I don't know. I think a lot of it, like I said, markets to false failure and paranoia. I do like the mindset of it. Um, but I think it's like personally, like probably the most overrated marketed martial art out there. Honestly, that's my opinion from doing it for years. But there are some great instructors out there, but like I said, it's more of an MMA school than anything else.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, speaking to maybe let's say the female student who is looking for a course that brings out her aggression, that she can maybe adapt to easily. I think that's something that one of the reasons Krav is so appealing. Jiu-jitsu is so intimate compared to Krav.
Mm-hmm.
You get close in Krav. Like you might every now and then be in like a mount-ish position, but at Jiu-jitsu, that's the thing the whole time.
Yeah.
So what would you say to someone who's searching for that balance, or would you just say outright avoid it unless you can vet your instructor?
Well, here's the thing. I mean, it's like I tell people, I don't care if it's a Taekwondo school, right? If it's close to, find something that, like me, I mean, I don't mind driving an hour and 20 minutes one way to train, right? But that's my lifestyle, right? It's something I've been doing for as long as I can remember. Uh, but if you want to do jiu-jitsu, but it's an hour drive, but the Krav school is 10 minutes, go do the Krav school because you're more likely to go when you're tired, right? It's because there's going to be a lot. I mean, we all had those days like, oh, I don't want to go to the gym. Here, my gym is 10 feet out the back door here, right? So I don't have an excuse not to work out, right? It's just like I'll pick up my cell phone and it's like, oh, your screen time has been 3 hours this week. I'm like, I'm going to go do a second workout because that's like too much screen time. But you know what I mean? So the gym has to be close to you. It may not be your first option, but if you're new and you're looking to get into the martial arts, pick something that is going to develop good habits. And then once your desire is there, then you can venture out, right? But yeah, I have really nothing against Krav because it does, like I said, the mindset and stuff like that. But there's better stuff out there, because to me, I think jujitsu for women is your most viable martial art because for a male to do anything to a female, they have to get inside of your personal space and put hands on you, right? And it's like, and I tell all women, it's like, you gotta have the awareness, right? But the awareness, everybody talks about awareness is like your surroundings, right? But awareness is like your emotional state, right? Because a lot of people, they see something, they're aware of it, but they just like have a meltdown, right? Because they've never experienced trauma before, right? So so awareness just isn't seeing like what's in your surroundings. It's also understanding what you're seeing, right? So once you understand what you're looking at, what's happening, you got to have preparedness. And then the whole SAOC readiness, then you got to have the willingness, right? So it's like, you got to have all three. And Krav can give you the preparedness, but it doesn't really matter what you train. If you're not willing to do what you prepared to do, then none of it matters, right? So, wherever you get the skill set, you get the skill set, right? But you got to have the willingness to apply it, right? Like I've seen a lot of trained individuals. I mean, it's like suffer badly because they weren't willing to cause injury to somebody, right? It's like a good example. Years ago, I was teaching women's self-defense class. It was a 2-day class. So Sunday, his female, she comes back to class, and you could just tell her whole body language, demeanor from Saturday. She was just down, right? So I go up to her like on a break. I'm like, hey, what's going on? She's like, well, I went home last night and I was all excited about what we learned and trained on yesterday. And my husband has threw me on the couch and has pinned me on the couch and nothing worked. I'm like, okay. So when you go home tonight, when he throws you on the couch and pins you, like, is there an end table next to your couch? And she's like, yeah. I'm like, is there a lamp on it? She's like, yeah. I'm like, well, when he pins you on the couch, reach behind you, grab the lamp, and just smash him in the face with it. And she's like, I can't. I love him. That's my husband. I can't do that. I'm like, well, then nothing you learn is going to work because you're not willing to hurt the other person.
Yes.
And she was just like, point. Okay. Like, ooh. So unless you have the willingness, like I can't, if I can just, take a computer chip for me and download it into your brain, it doesn't matter if I give you all the skills that I have if you're not willing to use it. So the martial art really doesn't matter. You got to have it all.
Yes. Ooh, I think it's so interesting you brought this topic up. I was talking about this the other day to a good friend of mine about how, I've trained my whole life in some type of combatives, and I actually have really good muscle memory. One time, for example, I was biking. I would bike to all my classes at the university. I was in labs all day and classes. And so back and forth. And one day, this is when I didn't wear a helmet, which is so silly. I was driving down, flying down this hill. I can't talk, cycling down this hill, and my hat started to blow off. So I went to grab it and my steering did a 90-degree turn and I flew over my bike and just so naturally did a side brake fall. And it was as I was flying through the air that my body just did it. And it's the only reason I didn't hit my head on the concrete. It was really strange.
Awesome. That's
happened a few other times where I've fallen and I brake fall and I catch myself, and I'm so proud of that. When it comes to the automatic response in a self-defense situation, not to go into too much detail, I don't want to take away from the initial point, but I have had partners and family members put me in compromising situations in the past, and I've had such a hard time defending myself in those moments compared to a stranger. I've had strangers, especially when I'm standing up for a stranger, all bets are off. I become a mean machine. But it's like when it's for myself, especially with someone I trust, I have this conditioned response to protect them and love them and not harm them. So what does someone do to work on that?
God, that's a tough question because if you really look at a lot of crime data, it's usually family violence, right? So it's really what are you willing to accept, and it kind of changing topics. You see this in the cop world a lot, right? Everybody's pushing jiu-jitsu in law enforcement, right? Jiu-jitsu, optic is better. But Todd Fox, I don't know if you know him, but he wrote a book, and I mean, it's he had an awesome quote in there. It's jiu-jitsu is being pushed so hard, and it's how do you say it? It's cops are getting so into jiu-jitsu, they're willing to risk injury to make their grappling work so the bad guy can safely resist. Right. So, and it kind of comes back to the civilian thing as well, right? It's you have all the preparedness, right? Emotionally and physically, but if you're not why are you making yourself less because you're not willing to hurt the other person, right? If they're going to try to cause you physical harm, right? It's then you have to value yourself more than that other person, which you should anyway, right? I think, if you can't if you don't love yourself, you're not going to love somebody else, right? So, you gotta put the highest value on yourself. Um, it's like I was talking to somebody like, if we were all at the Thanksgiving dinner table and my mom, if my mother walked into the kitchen carrying an axe, like I would probably kick her through the door, right? Because like that's not normal behavior, right? It's like, but that's actually happened where a guy walks in and kills a whole family with an axe at Thanksgiving, right? So it's just like, okay, well, my mom ever walked into Thanksgiving dinner carrying an axe, I'm probably going to kick her out the door. You know what I mean? It's just like, so you have to put more value on yourself, right? And it's like I tell people, it's like you have to like find something that's personal and passionate to you, right? Um, so, and like, so if you find something that is your personal passion about, right, and that person crosses that line, you know what I mean? You have something to fight for. You know what I mean? There was a lady up in Canada who worked all this overtime to buy this really cool, like Italian leather jacket for winter. And guy walks up, introduces a knife, drags her into the alley, right? And he attempts a sexual assault. Well, she looks down and she sees like a tear on the jacket that she worked for. And that was her switch. Like, you MFer, like, how dare you? I worked so hard for this. So that was something it was very personal and passionate about, was she earned that jacket. All right. So she ended up not getting sexually assaulted because that was what she was very passionate and personal about. Right. So everybody should have something that just flips that willingness switch, regardless if it's a husband, wife, whatever it is, right? You should not accept injury from anybody, especially somebody that you trust. That's the way I view it.
Absolutely. Oh, yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. Yes, man, that's really got me thinking. Yeah, 100%. If someone's listening, I just want to say this, I use my platform for good. If you're listening and this is something you're struggling with currently with someone in your life, I recently had someone removed from my life, and I did not feel physically safe with them, and it took getting away from them to see that I wasn't safe. And it's kind of terrifying when you gain that perspective and you realize you weren't safe. So if you're in that situation, I implore you to step back and take some time to think about that, whether that be going and staying with a family member or friend. You don't have to say why you're going, just go and get away and gain perspective. And yeah, find your why. Yeah. Oof, I love that. Thank you so much.
I was at HEB, our grocery store here in Texas, like, I don't know, a few weeks ago. There was a lady with a huge black eye. And I mean, everybody's just like walking by and looking at her, but it's like, I actually walked up like, hey, are you okay? And she was just like, oh, it was a car accident. This is like the airbag burns and stuff like that. I'm like, okay, just making sure you're okay.
Oh, that's so kind of you. I had people do that when I was in Muay Thai because my legs were so bruised. I was like, you should see the other guy. And they'd be like,
yeah,
what? I'd be like, no, I do Muay Thai, man. I'm training for a cage fight. Like, I just like,
awesome. I'd
freak out and like overcompensate by explaining what I did too much. Yeah. But I had people stop me in Walmart actually frequently. I started just wearing leggings.
So many people just like, I was in Walmart a couple of years ago, and I mean, my certs have expired, but I mean, I was a medic, but there was an older dude. He was probably like in his 80s, sitting on one of those little electronic shopping carts, but he was actually having a stroke. Everybody's just walking by this dude.
Whoa.
And I walked by and started doing like the fast tests and stuff on him. Right? Yeah. It's just like walking by. Nobody's like, it's just like, I sat there with a dude to the actual fire guy showed up, but it's just like, people, like I said, it's like they're aware of it because they see it, but they choose to, not be a good human and do nothing about it, which is baffling to me. It's crazy. But
Absolutely. Oh man, I've seen, since we're on this topic again, did not plan any of this, but I'm loving it. Uh, I have probably in some people's stories been the weirdo. So like if I see a woman and a man is following too close behind, I will like circle the block until she gets to her car. And
yeah,
I'm sure at some point this girl's been like, why is this car following me? When like
yeah,
really it actually happened in my neighborhood the other day. There's an individual with special needs. I'm not sure of his particular what would describe him appropriately. So I'm not going to speculate or anything, but
yeah,
he's always walking around looking just very just neurodivergent. We'll say that. And
yeah.
he was tracking this woman the other day, like super close behind her. And I'm thinking back to like Craig Douglas's class
Yeah.
is my first ECQC. He like threw that in as one of the scenarios, and I remember just thinking all I can do is at least make sure she gets where she's going safely.
Hmm.
So that was something I did. And but sometimes I think there's, as a female who travels alone often, it's kind of difficult to find that balance when it comes to like putting myself in a situation. Like I see people on the side of the road all the time. I'm like, damn, I wish I could
Hmm.
stop and help them. But I get in this place where I'm like, I have to also be smart for myself. And
Yeah.
if they look like they have a cell phone, I leave it alone. But would you say there's like an accurate way to find that balance, or would you just say use your gut in those situations when it comes to kind of inserting yourself into someone's life?
Yeah. I think honestly, you really have to listen to your instinct and intuition, right? I mean, if it's once again, you don't want to put yourself at risk, but it's you want to try to do stuff as safely as possible, right? But if if you if something tells you something isn't right, then it's probably not right. You know what I mean? So, um, but yeah, I mean, it's good to like if you see something like that, you can do something from the safety of your car, right? Hey, do you need help? Whatever, right? Can I call AAA? I've shared my AAA number with probably teenage girls on the highway before, type deal. But it's like I've changed tires for people in parking lots, which is another funny story from a while back about changing a tire, but I'll tell you that. But yeah, I mean, you really have to, like I said, like, and like you said, like just use your intuition. Like if it's like a high risk area, you know what I mean? Like you're traveling, like this area is already shady enough, then you have to really, like I said, like you have to value yourself first. You know what I mean? It's great to be like this, the hero of the day, but it's like, you're number one. You know what I mean? It's like, and for me, it's like, it's like everybody, especially like in the EDC world, like everybody wants to be the hero, right? Like, oh, the active shooter. I'm just like, dude, I carry a gun so I can get home to my wife, right? She's my number one responsibility. Like I don't get paid anymore to run towards gunfire. I mean, it was awesome when I did, but now I don't. And like, so I carry and I do everything I do to either get my wife to safety or to get home to her, right? Uh, Everything I do is to outlive her so she never has to be alone, right? So that's everything I do, right? So you have to put like your stuff in priorities, right? It's like,
Mm.
um, but that's the way I look at it.
Oh, I love
Uh,
that.
you know
You
what
can
I
make me
mean?
tear
But
up.
it's like,
Yeah, no. No,
but
that's really
like
sweet.
that's
Yeah.
just that's how I look at stuff now. I mean, and honestly, like especially around here, how I can tell you, like training in law enforcement is pretty much non-existent. So, like the chances of me running towards gunshots and having some scared cop who's never trained, right, see me with a gun and me get shot when I'm trying to help, like what good is that? Like I said, my priority is either getting my wife to safety or getting home to her so I can see my grandkids and stuff like that. It's like nothing else. Like, it's America. It's like everybody has the same constitutional rights I do, and you have the same opportunity to training. So if you don't take, stock in your own safety and stuff, then, I'm not going to lose sleep over it, because like I said, my priorities are here. That's the way I see it. But that's me.
Absolutely. Oh, I love that. Love that so much. Yeah, thank
So
you for going into that side of things. And I think, before this episode, you and I talked a little bit about female only, since we're kind of coming off of the topic, because I want to get into vehicle extractions. I think that's so interesting. And
yep.
I want to know, though, what has been your experience working with women alone?
To me, I love doing female only courses. I've done female only law enforcement classes and a bunch of civilian type courses. Like if there's a female real estate agent in my town here, they've probably been out here to train. And everybody in my wife's office, they now carry Craig Douglas's punch dagger. Like my
Ooh.
wife's office refers to herself as the Stabby Squad, which
I
is
love that.
awesome.
Wonderful.
But from my experience, like it's so funny because like I usually limit all my classes to like 12 people because I like the more private type one-on-one time you get with small groups. But with guys, you have a lot of egos. So if it's like a co-ed type class, like you'll have a female ask a legitimate question, you'll always have some guy like roll his eyes and stuff like that. When I was doing the female only cop classes, like I'd have to bring in like I'd have to bring in like extra instructors because I'd get like 20, 25 girls like, I want to do this. Right. And I bring in guys for the evolutions to be their bad guy. But like the questions and the camaraderie you would get from it was just amazing. Like I know I've done seminars before when I was coaching CrossFit where like a couple of the women they're like, yeah, I'm never going to do this again. Like because you'd have some guy who like class starts at 8, by noon they're already on like their third t-shirt. They're just like, that's the grossest I know. Like, so like, unless they're like training jujitsu or something, right? They're not into it. I just like with the female only classes, like, it's like, so like what we do out here, we have a female only classes and then we'll go out to like a wine bar afterwards. So like the community you see among females being developed, because my wife, she's a pretty high end cook. So she'll make lunch for everybody. I mean, she does
Oh,
it for all the classes, but
that's
like,
awesome.
but so it's like, but it was just like the car class we did a couple of weeks ago. It was just, I was just standing at our like kitchen island. I was just like smiling and watching like the communication happening at the table. It was just like amazing, right? You had a bunch of women who, for the most part, half of them never met each other before, but just from the conversation at the lunch table, you would think they've been friends for years. I mean, it was like, it's just super cool to me. But I know a lot of guys, they're like, oh, I'm not doing that woke gender bias stuff. But for me, I see such a huge benefit into it. Like, I don't know what your thoughts are, but for me, my experience, I think it's awesome.
Absolutely. I mean, I would trust those thoughts and especially the feedback and your intuition when you're instructing and you're getting, those feelings from women. I completely agree. I loved my women's only jiu-jitsu class that I was part of. At the time, I was teaching a kids class at a different gym. I was attending the co-ed adult class that was more of a competitive style class. But that hour before the co-ed class was women's only. We would do one technique usually, so it was much slower paced. But we had so much fun. We all got to catch up. We weren't worried about any pressure from men. The women that I trained with they're entire character was different away from men.
Yeah.
So I was able to kind of enjoy them in more of a social setting while just going into some really detailed and intentional work on one dynamic movement. So I think it's a great opportunity. What I've told women in the past who have asked me this question is that while women's only is incredibly beneficial for its own reasons, taking a co-ed class in addition to that to get the resistance of uh, a man with a man's strength, and
Yeah.
also to get comfortable being uncomfortable with a man in close quarters. I mean, one of the worst things about an encounter with a stranger is the whole like why me part. Like we're just the whole time we're thinking like why me, and like ooh someone's getting really close to me. So if we can just break that down into like, okay, I've expected this, I've seen this coming, and I know what it's like to get close and uncomfortable with a dude. I don't care if he's sweating on me, smells bad. I'm used to that from gi class, you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
if you know, you know. So all that's left to do is focus on the actual dynamic between you and him, as far as like where is he grabbing me, what's around me. So it takes away those elements. I think it's great, especially when you have an instructor who's passionate about that and doing it for all the right reasons. You can't go wrong.
Yeah. I think women's only, like they had a women's only jiu-jitsu class at the gym when I was in Georgia for a year and a half teaching at the Federal Academy. And like you'd walk in to the regular adult class, which was right after the women's, and it was just like such a cool dynamic. Like you said, it was like they were working really hard, but it was way more of like a social type scene versus like the regular adult class. But I think that one of the big benefits though, it empowers the female with the I can do this, and it gives her the inspiration to go to like the regular adult class with the guys, right? But it's a safe environment, like more like a trust environment because they're with their peers, basically, other females. And like I said, it inspires them from training with the more experienced females. Like, okay, I can do this. I'm going to seek more training. And that's what I see. I've had a ton of females come, like law enforcement officer females. They'll come to the female only class, and I'll get a message like, "Hey, I just signed up for whatever jiu-jitsu schools in my area. Thank you." You know, so like that's what I see, and I think that's the cool part. You know, if guys don't want to do it, then they don't want to do it. But I see a benefit to it, and I'll keep doing it.
Absolutely. So do you typically recommend, like if you had a woman come to you and she was like, okay, I really liked my women's only class, I'm ready for something a little bit more serious, are you quick to say go for co-ed? Like this is your time?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. You know, but I also like anybody, it could be male, female. It's like you're ready to go to like a regular jiu-jitsu school, right? And train with everybody there, right? You just, I guess you really can't say male and female nowadays, but whatever, right?
All good. Yes.
Yeah. It's like, but the thing is, like, if you're looking for a good training environment, if you go to your jiu-jitsu school and you don't see a kids class and females, like every class, like females are about 3% of the class, right? So if you don't have those kind of numbers, it's just all dudes, then it's probably not a good environment because it's a meathead gym, right? Like it's like I was telling my son who's a paramedic up in Fort Worth. It's like because he was looking for a school, so I sent him some options. I'm like, you know, but go in the evening time, look at their schedule. If they have a big kids class and there's about 3% women and men, then it's probably, you know, your chance of injury there is probably less than an all dude who wants to be the next, UFC champion. Right. So
Right.
that's how I direct people to look for good training environments where, you know, injuries are unavoidable at some point, but it's like they're way less in those kind of family environments.
Absolutely. Yes. And thank you for reinforcing that. Almost all of the jiu-jitsu people that have come on the podcast, I think we're almost 70 guest speakers in, have mentioned looking at the quantity of women compared to men, kids classes compared to, I guess, no kids class. So I love that is a very common theme. I just love to hear it because I've of course relayed that to many individuals looking for gyms.
Good.
So yeah, and I'm actually I recently moved from the city I was staying in temporarily. I've been traveling around so much. I pretty much Airbnb everywhere now, but I am looking for a new gym in this city, and there's really only one that I've found that is worth, in my opinion, checking out. And that is something I'm going to go look at myself. So
Awesome.
yeah, for those listening, I mean, it's a tried and true way to know. So, yeah, thank you for sharing that.
And on another women's note, I did get my buddy's wife after doing the vehicle class and seeing what combatives is about. She is signing up for the combative summit.
Ooh,
so she's a jiu-jitsu blue belt.
Yay.
Very strong CrossFitter. So you will have at least one other female next year that's very skilled. That'll be there.
Wonderful. So, there's actually do you remember his name? I hate that I don't remember. He owns a jiu-jitsu gym in Hawaii.
Oh, I know who you're talking about. I can't think of his name.
I know. I feel bad. It's unique, right? It's pretty unique.
Yeah. He's on Maui.
Yes.
I can't.
I'll find his gym and I'll link it as a resource in the show notes of this episode. He was talking about how I believe they're sending 2 women from that gym. So I know
that's awesome.
Now that's 3 that we did not have this year because Lisa and I were the only females. There was a female in like the very first class, like John's intro.
Where'd she go? I had no idea which one.
I don't know. And then I didn't want to, I don't know. I think she had come with her partner. So you never know. Maybe she just could only attend that first block.
One day,
absolutely. And it is an overwhelming experience. I couldn't imagine going to that alone for the first time, having 0 grappling experience. So, like I think it worked out really well with Lisa, and like now Lisa can be empowering for people going forward there. But absolutely,
and how's your shooting journey?
Ooh, my shooting journey is actually ramping up because I recently just kind of took a look in the mirror and was like, ooh, I'm not training enough. Let's make some differences here. I actually just got back from training with Lena in Utah with a member of the SIGSAR tactical games team. And then another woman, Katie, what is Katie's last name? She's on all of the Born Primitive brand commercials with their new pant. I hate that that's like the only connection I have to her, but she's a tactical games competitor in the elite division. I got to train with them for a few days, and that was fundamental. So I wrote down a few things I want to work on from those training sessions. Lena's really good about saying, what do you want to take from this and apply? So I'm going to schedule at least weekly live fire sessions. Before I was relying only on local matches to train, which you can only get so much feedback. You get videos of yourself and of course you get your scoring, but I'm trying to be more intentional about that training. And then I'm actually traveling to Washington in November to train with my Q's of Cert pistols. So I'm excited to get some intense training there.
I can't believe you and Lisa went to South Carolina with that hurricane coming.
Yeah, me either, man. Okay, so funny story. We actually dropped.
I was just like, if you're my daughter, I'd kick your ass. Like, what were you thinking?
My parents have stopped trying to tell me what to do. Basically, after I dropped out of medical school into the firearms industry, they were just like, "You do you." And it's funny. Lisa's mom probably called us like 5 times on the way, and she was like, "What are you doing?" And I remember I asked Lisa to drive because I had some editing deadlines. Ooh. Did you hear that?
Yeah.
It's like the wind here. I don't know if that doesn't blow anything over. We're having some serious winds in Oklahoma. Speaking of, Lisa was kind enough to drive. I was editing on my phone with a hat on like this with headphones that had noise cancellation on.
Yeah.
So I had no idea how bad it was. And then at one point I took a nap and I would wake up every now and then to Lisa throwing the brakes on because she could not see in front of her. The rain was so bad.
Oh my
So
God.
I think had I been more observant, which that is on me 100%, I would have probably said, let's not do this. But the idea that the TAC games was still on, they didn't
Yeah.
cancel it until 24 hours before. So we kind
Wow.
of gaslit ourselves and we were like, it
Yeah.
really can't be that bad.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, basically by the time we were locked into our Airbnb and were landlocked, we could not get out and the lake
I
levels were
see.
rising. We were like, well, this has been a good run. And then our Airbnb host let us know that the lake levels were controlled after asking us if his pontoon boat was still there. So that was really funny. We had to like
Oh,
go look out and see if his pontoon boat was still docked. So they had all these boats piling up under this bridge. It was a whole thing.
oh wow.
Anyway, proving your point, I can't believe we did that either. We are
I saw your videos. I'm
rescheduling.
like, what are you thinking?
Yeah,
Like,
I have
oh
no
my God.
idea. Man, I'm just been going full send with everything lately. If someone presents an idea, I've just been like, let's do it, not even really giving it much thought. But I've made it this far, so don't know that I'll change anything. But 2025 is what we're looking at for the new date. And what about you? What has been your recently? You've been training in a lot of instructional classes for firearms. So which class has spoken to you the most recently?
Oh wow. I'd say it's like I've done everything like in October. October I started off with Call Force Pistol Combatives class. Uh, awesome class. And then I got invited up by some Grapevine SWAT guys to do Gabe Rivera's class from Mindset Tactical Solutions. It was 1 day pistol rifle. Uh, awesome class. So, but I did realize like the rifle day, well, like I shouldn't be as competitive as I am at 57 because we did uh, like a stage run on the first day with a pistol. And I didn't win, of course, but I was, I don't know, top five or whatever. But anyway, regardless, like I get back to the motel room and I'm like, wow, I actually kind of pulled my right hamstring trying to win that race. So no big deal. So the next day, the rifle, like standing around for the 8 hour training day with a rifle slung around my back or my neck, I'm like, I'm actually kind of too old for this rifle stuff, you know? It's like I was like driving home. I was like, oh my God, like I'm tired, you know. So but and then I just did Joey Sarland's class, who's the Open National Champion. Uh, and it was interesting because I never had an instructor show up to a gun class without a gun. And I'm like, this is interesting. But it was probably one of the most amazing classes that I've had for competition shooting because it's basically, he doesn't demo anything because, like, he's not you. So, like, how he does something doesn't really matter. So he wants to see you, what you do, so he can fix you. So it was almost like there was only 11 of us in the class. He limits it to like 12. There was 11 of us there. And it was just basically like the other 10 people weren't even there. You know what I mean? It was just like you do a drill and then he put on a timer. He's like, now I want you to do this your second time through. So like we did this one drill. It was like 2 targets and an 8-foot wall. So like the first time you do it, I think I was like 224. And he was like, okay, I want you to visualize this and do this. Then I was like a 195. And he was like, okay, now the third time through, I want you just to add this. And I dropped down to like a 175.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
so,
Okay.
and at
Big
the end of the
difference.
day, I'm like, him not showing up with a gun, like really worked for him because it was like me hiring him to coach me for the day. So, I mean, it was like super cool. But the biggest takeaway that because he went from new shooter to national champion in 3.5 years, which is crazy, right? But he uses a metronome for dry fire. to work on training your vision and speed with the metronome.
What? I need to get
So
him on the podcast.
oh my God, it was amazing. So like we were like the first 2 hours of the day was like we were standing on a line going through like his dry fire drills, right?
Okay.
And then like, okay, now we're gonna do these 4 targets, but on a metrodome, right? So I'm like, okay, so he had like a boy's Bluetooth speaker, and it's like it has to be 2 trigger presses every time the beat goes, right? And because I mean, we've all heard about like a streak of red, right? You know what I mean? Like, you got a streak of red, you kind of got the bouncy dot, then you have like a stop stable dot, right? But using the metrodome was the first time where I really like, haha, that's what they mean by streak of red in the A zone, right? So, I mean, like I've been running a red dot since 2012, and I thought I knew what a streak of red looked like.
Mm-hmm.
But until you're trying to keep up with like 200 beats a minute on the metrodome with 4 targets, like it really didn't like, now I know. And then I shot a match on Sunday and I got to apply some of that. And I was like, huh. I mean, I still suck at the match, B class doing B class stuff, but it's like, it's like running past targets, like, oh, I was supposed to shoot those. Okay. Well, you know what I mean? It's like
Yes.
mental mistakes, but
Sure.
like, it was like, I've used a metrodome, like, God, for years running, like, hey, I want to run a 5-minute mile, and you set the metrodome or your foot has to hit every beat to do a 5-minute mile. But I never would have thought about using a metronome for dry fire training and speed work.
Didn't even know about the whole foot thing, but I will say I do use songs to keep my feet going. So it's basically the same thing. I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
No, that's so interesting. Yeah. Did he coin that? Is that like his practice?
I have no idea, but he was like,
yeah.
But the thing is, like, he does like over 90% of his work in dry fire.
Okay.
And like after 3.5 years of shooting, he's like finally hit like a 30,000 round mark live fire. Does very little live fire, all dry fire work. And then he does the things he can't do in dry fire, live fire. But 3.5 years from picking up a gun to national champion GM, it's crazy.
Jeez, that is incredible.
So, and he only does three live fire drills. And I'm just like, crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. So, because you said still sucking at it at B class, which by the way, B class is great. Congratulations. That's awesome. I want to know, why do you say that? Like, what is your goal with something like USPSA with what you do?
Honestly, I don't know. I know next year I will hit A or M, right?
Yeah, you will.
Just because I can talk more crap online to people who don't train.
Yeah.
That's literally like my whole goal with anything in life is to be able to like hurt more feelings online, because that's what I'm kind of known for. But so next year I will get A or M is my goal. I've had a couple A-class, very low A-class runs on classifiers at these local matches, but that's my goal next year. But really, I don't know. I mean, you see guys like Joey, it was like 2 4-foot walls, 5 targets set up, and he grabbed this dude's gun. And I mean, it was all dry fire stuff, but he was getting like, he set the metrodome to like 310 beats per minute. And he was hitting every target, but it looked like slow. But like we were doing it at like 220 beats a minute, and it seemed like my heart's going to blow up, like trying to keep up with that pace. And he did like a 310, and it's just like, I mean, so when you see what's possible with a handgun, it's just like, I want to see how close, like I'm stupid competitive still, right? It's like, I want to see how close I can get to that. I don't have all the time they do. So, but I don't know if I can get to A or, I really like to get to M class next year. It's really my goal, but it's really just to talk more crap online to people who refuse to train. So
That was going to be my next question as far as like, why is that your goal? But hey, if that's what motivates you, then go
I
for
mean,
it.
Matt Petranka is like my X-ray alpha. He's like my spirit animal in the gun world.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I love how he calls people out.
Yes,
You
he
know,
actually wrote me the other day. I'll have to pull up what his message was. I love the way he gives advice. It's so straightforward. He said, you just have to go fast. Too much over confirming. Change your training. Competitive training feeds into defensive, but they can't exist together. You want to go fast, go fast. Your defensive side will thank you. Just
yep.
my unsolicited. And I was like, oh, dude, thanks so much. And then I wrote him back and said, how should I drill this? Like, asked him a follow-up question. I always love his feedback. I know he has some serious controversy online, but everything that man has suggested to me has been helpful. And I think some people just get so caught up in the delivery of things, like they take advice personally when it's like it's actually great that someone is willing to take the time to write a message like that. And it's not, he's also asked me some incredibly thought-provoking questions. I mean, we had a big conversation one time on social media growth, and he was like, what's your goal? Is it ego? Is it? And I was like, yes, a little, damn it. Like, I didn't think about ego. That. Of course, ego plays into it. I guess I wanted to think I was different, and it got me thinking, and I think Matt's great. I love him. Yeah.
He's awesome. But I mean, it's like he has the experience and skill set to back it up too. You know what I mean? It's like, it's amazing.
Absolutely does.
But talking about going fast, that's where that metronome really was like, bing, to me, you know what I mean? Like, so I like, soon as like, I got home from the match on Sunday and I went into the gym to work on stuff that I screwed up at the match using the metronome just to work on transitions. Like, to me, it's kind of, and Joey said you can't overuse it. So, just sprinkle it in like once a week or whatever. But like, really, that really like was a light bulb moment for me when like with these high end shooters talking about a streak of red in the A zone, press the trigger. So it's really what I'm going to be working on like in the next couple months in dry fire. So,
I like that. Because you almost, is it like you keep up with the tempo as opposed to keeping up with your eyes?
The tempo, right?
Okay.
So it trains, like he kind of videotaped it but like your eyes because it's keeping up with the beat, it trains your eyes to actually move faster.
I love that.
It's weird, but if you play with it, you'll understand what I'm talking about. But to me, it was such a light bulb moment from Saturday. It really made like the price of the entry fee worth it. It was amazing.
Well, thank you for sharing your pistol training. That's so exciting. And I think it's a good reminder to people who are in the world of firearms that there are so many incredible instructors out there. And if you're ever feeling like you're in a rut, best thing you can do is just go take a class, whether it's training or content. Just go take a class. So thank you for those suggestions. I'll be sure to link those individuals along with your class links, of course, the priority. And speaking of, you teach a class called, from what I understand, vehicle extractions and control tactics. So what all goes into that class, if you don't mind me asking?
So the vehicle extractions is more of a LE class, of course, because civilians really aren't pulling people out of cars. Right. Hopefully not. But so vehicle extractions really is something that's not taught in law enforcement. So for me, it started in February of 2004. We had a 14-year-old Florencia gangster girl did an armed carjacking, and we got into a pursuit. And I was the driver, so I pitted her and pinned her into the sidewalk. But at the time in 2004, when she was like, nope, I'm not getting out of the car, that technically made her a barricaded suspect, and it was a SWAT call out. But even in Southern California in February, and it was kind of misty because you had the marine layer, and it was cold. Like, I don't like the cold. So my watch commander, who was on the opposite sidewalk, he's like, it's a SWAT call out. She's not getting out of the car. It's an armed subject. And I'm like, I'm not going to wait 3 hours to SWAT. I'm going to pull her out of the car. And so that didn't go well. But anyway, I ended up I came up with a plan with some other guys there. We pulled her out of the car, ended up making national news because my family in Virginia was calling me, "Hey, that was you pulling that girl out of the car."
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
So, yeah. And was my son's favorite story when he was like in elementary school. My dad beats up 14-year-old girls, but that's how, so
That's
we,
so funny.
so, so us as like my training partners, we started looking at ways to pull people out of cars because it wasn't something that I've ever trained. And it's like something that is really still not trained. There's so many videos out there. So that happened in February, and I think it was May timeframe. We had online learning, and they actually had a video of the pursuit. And in the online learning, it was like, this officer's use of force and tactics within department policy? And I'm like, me and my partner was like, I don't know. We never got in trouble for it. So I guess so. We hit yes. And so it came up, it's in policy. So it changed the policy to not being a SWAT call out. And literally that first month, like people were getting ripped out of cars all over LA, which was hilarious. But I mean, we ended up doing like a few more vehicle extractions. Like there was a pursuit that we were involved with. The guy crashes in, it was an older gentleman, he crashes into an apartment building. So we do the tactics we work on, like you saw at the summit. Guy sets up in the mirrors, lethal cover. I smash the window. As soon as the window smashes, the lethal cover guy hits him with a taser, and I go in to put hands on, and then I smell like the fruity breath. I'm like, oh, this guy's having a diabetic incident. I'm sorry to taser you. Let me get you out of the car and we'll call the ambulance, right? It was all good still. But
Wow.
like we really started, like that's where like, a lot of people, was like a niche thing, right? But like they did a thing where, and I don't know how accurate it is, but they said like in South Central LA, 4 out of 7 traffic stops, there's a gun in the car, right? So you have to come up with tactics to deal with an armed subject. And that's kind of like where I built what I teach, right? But there's a lot of people now trying to teach vehicle extractions where they're using like a third person, where the third person is actually standing between the guy at the B pillar and the door, right? So now but I can pull up 10 videos right now where it shows that officer getting shot. But the guy's teaching that swears like, oh, if we pressure tested it, like blah, blah, blah. It's like, dude, you can't say you pressure tested it because no tactics in the world teach you to stand in the middle of the door. But that's what you're doing, right? So, I mean, there's a lot of stuff out there, but, there's a 1,000 ways to pull people out of the cars, but there's a particular way you have to set up to pull them out of the car that's safely. And a lot of people, they claim like I said, they pressure tested this and that. And obviously, like I can just look at what they're doing and see where it's going to fail. And you have videos that show that it actually fails, but they still teach it. But yeah, so that's where the vehicle extraction has come from. I know there's been a few cops here in Texas that's lost their jobs over trying to pull people out of cars. And so I think it's like I said, it's one of those deals that it's not trained. If it is trained, in my opinion, most times it's not trained properly from an officer safety standpoint. But guys are more focused on selling their jiu-jitsu than looking at, where stuff fails. And I think with anything in combatives, if you look for where whatever you're working on fails, you'll have a solution. So if it does fail in the real world, you already have a solution for it. You're not trying to figure it out on the fly. But people don't train from that mindset.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you for sharing that. And as far as your goals as an instructor, are you trying to create a curriculum that you can have a curriculum you can spread so that you have instructors under you spreading this throughout the United States? Or is this just something you teach locally? What's your goal there?
I've been all over the country, out of the country, but for me, it's just like, I don't know. I'm not trying to like, I give you the information, and what you do with the information is like up to you, right? I have no desire to be like, I don't know, Instagram celebrity or a content creator or whatever you call it. I'm more, it's like with me, like I'll do classes here at my house. I don't care if one person shows up or 10 people show up. If I can make one person better, then it's a good day for me. That's really like where I'm at in my headspace is like, like I said, if 1, 10, 100, it doesn't matter, because I just want to make a safer community, basically, is what I'm looking at. And I'd rather help people than be somebody, if that makes sense. But that's the problem with social media. So many people are trying to be somebody over helping somebody. And you can just go on their page and there's like 8,000 videos of them doing something. And generally, like, if I remember to take videos or photos, it's of what my students are doing. It doesn't matter what I can do. It's what my students can do. Right. So, but there's so many instructors. It's like the guy from Saturday Night Live, it's like, Stewie, like, look what I can do. Look what I can do. Look what I mean? It's like, but that's the majority of what I see on Instagram. It's like half the time I'll go teach a class somewhere. My wife's like, did you get a class photo? Like, oh, no, I forgot. Like, because I'm so focused on like helping the group that I don't think of that stuff. To me, that stuff, like, to me, marketing is word of mouth. You know what I mean? It's like, I guess I can't say I'm really too old for social media because I'm a technology nerd, but it's just like, I'm not going to sit around and like make 8,000 videos a day. Like, look at what I mean. It's like I post a video that's generally of like something my students are doing or I'm doing with my student. You know what I mean? It's like, I don't know. I guess I'm a horrible business person, but like I get more enjoyment out of like helping one person. I don't, it could be 100, it could be one. I don't care. It's like I had one person sign up for a class and they're like, I sent out an email and they're like, hey, I'm the only name on the email. Are you going to cancel the class? I'm like, why would I cancel the class? Like, you're just going to get 8 hours of private training. Like, I'm not going to cancel the class. Like, at least one person will have some skill set to make themselves safer. I don't care. It's like, I got to walk 10 feet to my gym. Why would I cancel the class? It's like,
Oh, I love that. That's so refreshing. Yeah, I know so many instructors that have canceled if there's less than like 8. So
yeah.
that's lovely, and that's actually a really good reminder for me as a content creator. I I think there's some dissonance there in my own life that I've been recently reflecting on, as far as, because I haven't been teaching as many firearms classes lately, but I have been making more YouTube content with things about like concealment technique and how to get started in USPSA, like things that people have reached out to me about, but I haven't had the time to explain it all. So the YouTube video is my way of answering people on like a larger level. But I absolutely agree. The classes where I have like 3 women and I get to spend, 3-4 hours with them, compared to like a post I post on social media, the gratification is so different and the impact is so different. So I think that's a good reminder for everyone. I just evaluate, where are you at? Are you trying to be more of a showman or an instructor and a helper? I love that. Thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, it's like, I don't know. It's like, for me, it's like, I consider myself a coach over an instructor or anything else. And everybody's like, and they even said that when I was a firearms instructor at the Federal Academy. I'm like, I'm not your instructor. I'm not this or that. It's like, and it was so different because everybody there was like, oh, I'm Mr. So-and-so. And I'm like, from day one, like, hey, my name's Cliff. I'm not sir. I'm not instructor, whatever. It's like, I'm your coach. And I'd ask them, like, what's the difference between a coach and an instructor? And they're like, I'm like, here, an instructor just reads what's in the book.
Right.
I'm your coach. I'm here to inspire performance out of you for the next 6 weeks.
Absolutely.
And they're like, oh, okay. And all the other instructors that would be helping me for the class in the background are like, oh, you're such an asshole, like calling us out. But it's so true. It's like,
yes.
But that's, it's like, because everybody, it's like, I ask guys, like, it's like, what sport did you play in high school or school in general? Did
You're
you play
asking me?
sport? Yeah.
Oh, volleyball.
Volleyball. Okay. What grade did you start volleyball?
Ooh, sixth grade.
Sixth grade. Okay.
Yeah.
Who was your sixth grade like math teacher?
Ooh, Mrs. Smith.
Okay, and that's rare that you can remember that. But
Because
who
she
was
was
your
terrible.
Okay, there's something there, right? Usually people are like, I have no clue, right? So you're like the unicorn. But who's your volleyball coach, right? Usually everybody remembers their volleyball coach or their whatever their coach was, but they have no idea who their teacher was, right?
Ooh, yeah. I mean, yeah, it was actually, I do remember I think her last name was Tipton.
Yeah.
Fond memories, but no, Miss Smith I did not like her. She
Yeah. Well, see,
made me feel so dumb.
but generally, most people, like, I can remember one of my second grade teachers because she was phenomenal. But
Right.
Mrs.
You're right.
Short,
It's
but
the
it's
extremes.
Like, it's extremes, right?
Yes.
There's only a few teachers I can remember, but I can name every single one of my coaches. Right.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
because your coaches
I can
inspire performance and stuff. So
yes,
you should strive to be a coach, not just another instructor regurgitating information.
I love that. I love that so much. And yes, I think another one of the reasons I remember her is, I know this is not the point, but my sisters and I were all traumatized by her. So we had years of ruminating over her influence in our lives. But I agree. All of my coaches come to mind easily, whereas any other instructors, like freaking science, history, I don't remember them.
Yeah.
So I love that. How wonderful. Absolutely. Oh. As far as all the topics I wanted to cover today, we covered them all and more.
Awesome.
I feel so just grateful for this conversation. I've gained so much from it. I have things that I'm definitely going to be thinking about on my drive home today. Got a 2-hour commute to Fort Smith, and after all these episodes, I tend to just digest everything afterwards. And
very cool.
I'm so thankful for you taking time out of your day, Cliff. And something I like to do with guest speakers before the episode is over is ask if you would like to leave the listeners with anything. Is there anything that comes to mind?
Nothing that comes to mind. I mean, just be a good human. Get out there and train. I mean, just do better as a person, basically. There's so much BS right now. It's like, just be a good person. Be a good neighbor, whatever. So that's it.
I love that. Yes. I love that. It actually reminds me, I got pulled over by a cop 2 months ago during a very emotional day. I did not realize I was speeding. And he was like, you need to reevaluate your life and do better. And I was like, you could not be more right. I know, man. Like, that's why I'm crying. We had this like really emotional moment. And I was like, thank you for not giving me a ticket. But yes, I completely agree. I think that's awesome. It's a much more friendly reminder than, I think this guy was judging me a little bit more than you were. But yes, thank you so much for sharing your stories, your expertise. For those of you listening, I have everything linked so that you can train with Cliff and Hill Country Combatives in the show notes, which are the notes below the title. So be sure to do that. And yes, even though he's not trying to be the next influencer, check him out on social media. All of his links for that will be linked as well. Like I mentioned before, Lisa is the creator of all those shorts you see on all platforms, everything from Livefire to TikTok to Instagram to YouTube. Check those out. I love those shorts because they're an example of the episode along with some B-roll of the guest speakers doing the things that they love to do. If you like the podcast, you can help by leaving a review. And lastly, I always like to mention holdmyguns.org. They are an honorary sponsor. They're an organization that will connect you with a local gun shop or FFL to store your firearm for you in a time of need. The link to access their website and find a storage location partner is in the show notes. Thank you for listening. In the meantime, stay safe and stay vigilant. SOG knives began with the mission to reproduce the original SOG Bowie knife used by the Special Ops Unit MACV SOG. Today, SOG knives are carried with confidence into the most demanding situations. Forged out of tradition, hardened in the field, honed for you, whether you're protecting others or leading an epic hunting expedition, tackling one of life's everyday challenges, or facing your most extreme conditions yet, lead the way with SOG. What began as a single commemorative model soon became a full line of innovative tools, field-proven by U.S. Special Forces, even honored as the Navy SEAL knife of choice. I've personally carried SOG knives since I added knives to my everyday carry setup, and have yet to be disappointed by their design and durability. Their craftsmanship is rooted in legacy of honor and courage, and is unmatched. With SOG by your side, you are equipped to lead the way, no matter the challenge. So join the ranks of those who dare to push beyond the limits and define their own legacy, and use code SHESHIELD20, that's SHESHIELD 20, to save and to support the pod. Again, that's SHESHIELD20 at checkout.